Good morning, everyone. My name is Md Saif Hassan Onim, and today I will present my PhD dissertation defense titled Next Generation Healthcare with Applied Machine Learning in Quantum Machine Learning. The central theme of this dissertation is the development of machine learning and quantum machine learning frameworks for healthcare applications, particularly stress, emotion, and physiological data integrity in older adults. This slide shows the outline of the presentation. I will begin with the motivation and background, then discuss machine learning for context-aware digital biomarkers of stress in older adults. Next, I will present emotion detection using physiological signals from wearable sensors. After that, I will move into hybrid quantum support vector machines for stress and emotion detection, quantum machine learning for physiological data tampering detection, and finally the scalability of quantum models. I will end with the conclusion and future research directions. I will begin with the introduction. This section motivates why stress and emotion monitoring are important in healthcare, especially for older adults and individuals with cognitive vulnerability. It also introduces wearable physiological sensing as a non-obtrusive way to collect data continuously and explains why machine learning and quantum machine learning are useful for analyzing these signals. Stress can be defined as a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation. It is a natural human response that helps us address challenges and threats. However, the effect of stress depends on its intensity and duration. Acute stress may be temporary and manageable, while chronic stress can have long-term health consequences. This is especially important for older adults, where sustained stress may be associated with cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease-related outcomes. Stress is not always immediately harmful. As the human response curve shows, some stress can enhance performance up to an optimal point. However, excessive or prolonged stress can lead to fatigue, distress, and eventually burnout. Older adults may be more vulnerable to these effects, and prolonged exposure to chronic stress can contribute to adverse health outcomes. This motivates the question: can physiological sensors detect and predict stress events in a non-obtrusive way for older adults? Emotion also changes with age, and emotional expression can be difficult to interpret, especially in older adults. Traditional emotion recognition often relies on facial expressions, video, or behavioral assessment. However, those approaches can raise privacy concerns and may not be suitable in many healthcare settings. Here, the key question is whether physiological sensors alone can detect emotional intensity without needing video or facial expression analysis. Wearable devices provide a practical path toward non-obtrusive monitoring. Devices such as Empatica E4 and Shimmer collect signals including photoplethysmography, galvanic skin response, heart rate, accelerometer data, skin temperature, and electrodermal activity. These signals capture different aspects of physiological response. The challenge is to convert these raw and noisy multimodal signals into reliable biomarkers for stress, emotion, and health-related changes. Stress and emotion detection are challenging because human responses are complex and dynamic. They vary with age, individual differences, and environmental context. Traditional approaches often depend on self-report questionnaires, behavioral tasks, or camera-based methods. These can produce false positives, may not generalize well to real-world settings, and require active user participation. For older adults with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, these limitations become even more significant. At a high level, this dissertation explores three solution strategies. First, I develop multimodal digital biomarkers using continuous and non-intrusive physiological monitoring. Second, I investigate temporal deep learning models such as RNNs and LSTMs to capture long-range dependencies in physiological patterns. Third, I investigate hybrid quantum classical learning, where high-dimensional features can be represented through quantum circuits to potentially reduce model complexity and improve separability. This slide summarizes the key contributions of the dissertation. The work includes context-aware stress detection using multimodal physiological signals, CNN-based automatic feature encoding for stress classification, stress prediction using time series models, emotion intensity estimation using wearable data, quantum hybrid SVMs for stress and emotion detection, physiological data tampering detection using quantum machine learning, and finally a scalability analysis of quantum models across stress, emotion, and tampering detection tasks. This slide lists the journal and conference publications that support the dissertation. These publications cover context-aware stress detection reviews, emotion recognition with quantum machine learning, emotion detection from wearable physiological signals, quantum hybrid support vector machines for stress detection, and physiological data tampering detection. Together, they show the progression from classical wearable-based biomarkers to quantum machine learning and security-aware healthcare analytics. The publication list continues here, including work on anomaly detection for cyber-physical security using quantum hybrid support vector machines, stress prediction using RNN and LSTM models, and the CASDOA framework for context-aware stress detection in older adults. It also includes poster and abstract contributions related to wearable sensors, Alzheimer's disease dyads, and physiological stress responses in community-dwelling older adults. This slide completes the publication list. It includes work presented at the Quantum Computing User Forum, Alzheimer's Association International Conference, Military Health System Research Symposium, and Clinical and Translational Science Conferences. These publications demonstrate that the dissertation spans both engineering and healthcare-facing venues, connecting wearable sensing, machine learning, quantum computing, and older adult health. The first major technical part of the dissertation focuses on utilizing machine learning for context-aware digital biomarkers of stress in older adults. The goal of this section is to determine whether wearable physiological signals, combined with context and cortisol-based ground truth, can support reliable stress detection and stress prediction. This slide compares the proposed work with recent literature. Prior studies used different sensors, target age groups, and ground truth definitions. A key distinction in this dissertation is the focus on older adults, the use of physiological signals such as EDA, BDP, and skin temperature, and the use of cortisol concentration as a biological ground truth. This makes the work more clinically grounded than approaches based only on self-report or questionnaires. The main contributions of this stress biomarker section are fivefold. First, the work correlates digital biomarkers of stress with experimental data from 40 healthy older adults. Second, it proposes a ground truth labeling scheme based on cortisol concentration. Third, it validates sensor fusion for improving classifier accuracy. Fourth, it introduces a CNN-based feature encoder to automate feature selection. Finally, it develops RNN and LSTM time series models for stress prediction. To validate digital biomarkers for stress, the work includes 3 experiments. The first experiment uses classical machine learning with manual feature engineering. The second uses fully connected neural networks and CNN-based feature selection for stress detection. The third uses time series models, specifically RNNs and LSTMs, for stress prediction. Together, these experiments evaluate detection, automated feature learning, and temporal forecasting. This slide shows the proposed context-aware stress detection workflow using manual feature engineering. Saliva samples are used to obtain cortisol concentration, which provides the ground truth labeling. At the same time, wearable sensor readings from the Empatica E4 provide physiological signals such as heart rate, interbeat interval, blood volume pulse, electrodermal activity, and temperature. These signals are pre-processed, fused, and then classified using a random forest model. The Trier Social Stress Test, or TSST, is used as the stress induction protocol. The pre-stress phase collects baseline measurements, followed by anticipatory stress, speech assignment, and mental arithmetic phases. The study ends with recovery phases. Cortisol is used as ground truth because the hypothalamus triggers physiological pathways that lead to cortisol release. The 2D projection shows 3 stress classes with overlap, which motivates the use of context to reduce false positives. This slide explains the proposed ground truth labeling system and context awareness. Cortisol concentrations across time slots are used to assign no stress, low stress, and high stress labels. Context-aware learning means that the algorithm uses additional information, such as time, environment, activity, or physiological state, to improve interpretation. The hypothesis is that incorporating context into machine learning models can improve stress detection performance, especially when physiological classes overlap. For the manual feature experiment, the dataset includes 40 participants under the TSST protocol, with cortisol concentration as the ground truth. The extracted physiological features include statistical and signal-based descriptors such as mean, variance, entropy, autocorrelation, signal energy, and waveform length. Out of 41 total features, 24 were selected. A random forest classifier was trained using leave one sample out cross-validation. The experimental results show the value of context and sensor fusion. Without context, the random forest model achieves lower macro F1 scores and lower accuracy. When context is added, accuracy increases by about 20% and the F1 score increases by around 0.2. The results also show that sensor fusion helps reduce false positives, supporting the hypothesis that contextual information improves physiological stress detection. The next workflow extends the stress detection framework using a CNN-based model. The data still begins with cortisol-based ground truth and wearable physiological sensor readings, but instead of relying only on manual feature selection, the model uses a one-dimensional CNN to learn feature representations automatically. This allows the framework to capture more complex signal patterns before classification. This slide summarizes the hyperparameters and architecture of the CNN-based model. The dataset again includes 40 participants under TSST, with cortisol as the ground truth. The CNN-based approach uses 128 total input features and 5-fold cross-validation. The model combines a feature encoder with convolutional and pooling layers, followed by dense layers for classification. This architecture is designed to automate feature extraction while still using physiological stress signals. The CNN-based results show a major improvement when context is added. The F1 score increases from 0.7552 to 0.9745, while accuracy increases from about 83.78% to about 96.75%. Compared with traditional machine learning using manual feature engineering, the CNN-based model performs better both with and without context. This suggests that automatic feature learning can improve stress detection from wearable physiological data. This slide introduces the proposed stress prediction method. Instead of detecting stress only at a fixed time point, the goal is to forecast stress using temporal physiological patterns. The workflow processes EDA, BDP, and skin temperature signals, extracts features, and feeds them into time series models. Both RNN and LSTM architectures are evaluated, followed by dense layers for classification. The stress prediction experiment uses 40 participants, TSST-based stress induction, cortisol concentration as ground truth, and 60 total features. The models are RNNs and LSTMs, evaluated using 3-fold cross-validation. RNNs use feedback loops to maintain memory, but can suffer from vanishing gradients. LSTMs address this limitation using memory cells and forget gates, making them better suited for longer temporal dependencies. The experimental results show that prediction accuracy remains stable until about 4.5 minutes, or the 270th sample, and then declines significantly. Comparing models, LSTM achieves stronger performance than RNN for the stress class, particularly in recall and F1 score. This indicates that LSTM is better at capturing temporal stress patterns and is more effective for short-term stress prediction using wearable physiological data. This slide compares the stress prediction results with contemporary literature. Prior work used a range of datasets, protocols, and machine learning methods, including SVMs, random forests, LSTMs, and multitask models. The proposed work focuses on a custom TSST dataset with 40 older adults and reports strong performance for both RNN and LSTM models, with the best result achieved within the 4.5-minute prediction window. In conclusion, this section shows that digital biomarkers derived from wearable physiological signals provide a viable foundation for context-aware stress detection and prediction in older adults. The results demonstrate that both detection and prediction can be improved using context, sensor fusion, automated feature extraction, and temporal modeling. Overall, wearable physiological signals are shown to be strong biomarkers for stress-related analysis. The next major section focuses on emotion detection in older adults using physiological signals from wearable sensors. The key question is whether emotional intensity can be estimated without using cameras or facial expression during inference. This is important because camera-based systems can raise privacy concerns and may be difficult to deploy in healthcare environments. This slide compares the proposed emotion detection work with recent literature. Many previous studies relied on facial expression, speech, video, or younger adult populations. In contrast, this work focuses on older adults and wearable physiological signals. The goal is to evaluate whether signals collected from wearable devices can provide enough information to estimate emotional intensity in a non-obtrusive manner. The literature comparison continues here. Existing emotion detection studies vary widely in terms of sensors, target populations, emotion labels, and modeling approaches. This motivates the need for a wearable-only framework that is suitable for older adults and can operate without continuous video monitoring. This work addresses that gap by using physiological signals to estimate emotion intensity. The contributions of this emotion detection work are threefold. First, the work detects the intensity of three distinct emotional states: neutral, positive, and negative. Second, it uses machine learning regression models rather than only classification. Third, it demonstrates that emotion recognition can be achieved using only sensor data, without requiring visual inputs during inference. This slide shows the proposed emotion detection workflow. Physiological signals are collected from wearable sensors and processed into feature representations. The data are then used to train regression models that estimate emotion intensity. The overall goal is to map wearable physiological patterns to emotional states while avoiding the need for video-based facial expression analysis during deployment. Emotion detection is motivated by the connection between emotional well-being, cognitive health, and physical health. Changes in emotional patterns may act as early indicators for neurodegenerative diseases, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Traditional approaches often use facial expression analysis, speech recognition, or behavioral assessment, but these require active participation or visual monitoring. Physiological signals offer a more privacy-preserving alternative. This slide shows dataset characteristics and feature behavior. The 2D projection indicates that emotion clusters have overlap, which means the problem is not linearly separable. The correlation heat map also shows that most features are not strongly linearly correlated. These observations motivate the use of machine learning models that can capture nonlinear relationships between physiological signals and emotional intensity. This slide summarizes the baseline and regression model setup. The labeled dataset includes baseline emotion intensity information and machine learning hyperparameters. The goal is to compare regression models on their ability to estimate neutral, positive, and negative emotion intensity. Instead of only assigning a class label, the regression setting allows the model to predict a continuous measure of emotional response. The experimental results are evaluated using R-squared and mean-squared error. The R-squared score indicates how much variation in the target emotional intensity the model can explain. Mean-squared error measures the squared difference between predicted and actual values. Together, these metrics show whether physiological signals alone can support reliable estimation of emotion intensity. The conclusion of this section is that emotion detection using physiological signals alone is feasible. The results validate wearable sensor data as a useful source for capturing emotional states without intrusive facial recognition. This makes the approach promising for integration into hospitals, assisted living environments, and other healthcare settings where privacy and non-obtrusive monitoring are important. The next section moves from classical machine learning to quantum machine learning. Specifically, I present quantum hybrid support vector machines for stress and emotion detection in older adults. This section investigates whether quantum kernels and quantum feature maps can improve separability and robustness for physiological signal classification tasks. This slide frames stress and emotion detection within the broader detection pipeline. Traditional methods include questionnaires, user feedback, live video feeds, and classical machine learning. The question is whether quantum machine learning can contribute to this space. Kernel-based SVMs are useful because they capture correlations in high-dimensional data, and quantum circuits can compute fidelity between feature representations using entangled quantum states. The relevant literature shows several gaps. Many emotion detection works rely on recorded videos, acted or posed stimuli, or indoor activities. Several methods require video either during training or inference, and many studies target young adults or general adult populations rather than older adults. The proposed work addresses these gaps by focusing on older adults and wearable physiological signals, while evaluating both classical and quantum approaches. The contributions of this section include treating stress detection as an anomaly detection problem, detecting neutral, positive, and negative emotion intensity using only sensor data, comparing classical machine learning with hybrid quantum machine learning, and analyzing performance through quantum simulation using 4 and 6 qubit configurations. This helps evaluate whether quantum kernels can provide practical benefits for physiological data analysis. Quantum machine learning can embed data into very large feature spaces, enabling richer feature representations. In the context of kernel methods, the goal is to map input data into a higher dimensional space where classes may become more separable. Quantum circuits can reproduce this behavior using entangled qubits and superposition. This makes hybrid quantum support vector machines a promising model for biomedical signal analysis. Feature extraction and selection are important because encoding all available features into quantum circuits can be computationally expensive. The complexity increases rapidly as the number of features and qubits grow. Less informative or weakly correlated features can also make convergence harder. To address this, the work ranks features using random forest Gini impurity and selects the most useful features for quantum encoding. This slide shows the proposed QML stress detection workflow. The implementation uses Python, PennyLane, and Qiskit with state vector simulation. Data points are encoded using a quantum feature map, where single qubit gates and entanglement gates build the quantum representation. The model measures the probability of observing the all-zero state, which is used to compute quantum kernel similarity for the support vector machine. The experimental results show that the quantum SVM performs better than the classical SVM in this setting. The best configuration uses 12 features and 6 qubits, achieving 79% accuracy and an F1 score of 0.78. The quantum SVM also shows low precision but high recall, which is meaningful in healthcare because higher recall means fewer stress-related cases are missed. This slide introduces the proposed QML-based emotion detection workflow. Similar to the stress case, wearable physiological features are processed and encoded into a quantum kernel model. The goal is to classify or estimate emotional states using hybrid quantum machine learning, while avoiding video-based inference and preserving the practical benefits of wearable sensing. The experimental results compare classical machine learning models with the hybrid quantum SVM model. The classical models provide a baseline, while the hybrid quantum SVM evaluates whether quantum kernels improve performance across emotion classes. These results show the potential of quantum feature maps for learning separability in physiological emotion detection data. The conclusion of this section is that effective pre-processing combined with quantum feature maps can support quantum-based detection in complex physiological datasets. For stress detection, the results show potential for quantum machine learning in older adult applications. For emotion detection, the results show that emotional states can be inferred from physiological signals alone, and that hybrid quantum SVMs can improve robustness even with relatively small samples. The next section focuses on detection of physiological data tampering attacks using quantum machine learning. As wearable sensors become part of healthcare systems, data integrity becomes critical. If physiological data are tampered with, the downstream model may make incorrect decisions, which can have serious consequences in health-related applications. This slide introduces the data tampering problem. Healthcare and cyber-physical systems are increasingly vulnerable to attacks, and physiological data can be manipulated before or during inference. Depending on the application, the consequences can be severe. Machine learning can help detect tampered data by learning the inherent patterns of clean physiological signals and identifying deviations from those patterns. The contributions of this section include experiments on 3 physiological sensor datasets with 1, 2, and 3 class labels, a threat model with 2 white box attack categories, including data poisoning and adversarial perturbation, a hybrid detection framework using kernel-based SVM with a quantum kernel circuit, and a comparison between classical and quantum models using the same number of features. This slide shows the adversarial white box threat model. Attacks include label flipping, where class labels are changed while the features remain the same, targeted poisoning, where the attacker tries to force specific mistakes, and adversarial perturbation, where small but carefully designed changes are added to input data. These attacks can alter training or inference behavior and lead to faulty decision-making. The tampering detection experiments use 3 datasets. Resting EC includes ECG data with 1 class, ethnogram includes ECG and PCG data with 2 labels, and the stress dataset includes EDA, BVP, IBI, and skin temperature with 3 stress classes. These datasets vary in signal type, label structure, participant age, and number of extracted features, allowing the models to be tested under different conditions. This slide shows the proposed tampering detection workflow. Clean training data are used to train the model, while adversarial data are generated through the threat model. The data go through pre-processing and feature selection, then a quantum kernel is used to compute fidelity between quantum states. The final model distinguishes clean physiological data from tampered data. This slide provides a more detailed view of the hybrid model workflow. The process begins with clean physiological data and threat model-generated adversarial data. The model is trained in a cloud-like setting and then deployed for inference at the edge. The hybrid approach combines classical preprocessing and SVM structure with quantum kernel computation, allowing the model to use quantum feature elevation for anomaly detection. The experimental results show that the hybrid model improves detection in several cases. For resting EC single label data, the hybrid model performs about 12% better. For the 2-label ethnogram dataset, the hybrid model performs better against targeted poisoning attacks. For the 3-label stress dataset, the hybrid model achieves about 15% higher accuracy against label flipping attacks. However, both classical and hybrid models struggle with adversarial perturbation. The conclusion of the tampering detection section is that quantum models can improve detection rates for label flipping attacks, with a maximum improvement of 15%. Quantum algorithms appear better suited for identifying some kinds of data manipulation, although more sophisticated attacks such as adversarial perturbation remain difficult. This motivates future work on more robust quantum machine learning models, including quantum neural networks. The final technical section focuses on scalability analysis of quantum models for stress, emotion, and data tampering detection. Earlier results showed feasibility, but feasibility is not enough. For practical use, we need to understand whether quantum models can scale as the number of features and qubits increases, and whether performance improves in a consistent and computationally feasible way. This slide explains the motivation for scalability analysis. The previous frameworks studied stress, agitation, and negative emotional health in older adults using biomarkers and QML detection methods. The question now is whether those frameworks can scale with increased features and qubits to compete against classical baselines. In this context, scaling means increasing model capacity by adding qubits, extending the feature set, and tracking computational overhead. Kernel scaling is a central challenge. The kernel matrix size depends on the number of samples, because each sample must be compared against other samples. The number of features does not change the matrix shape, but it increases the cost of computing each kernel value. Therefore, scalability depends both on sample count and on the complexity of each feature-encoded quantum circuit. This slide summarizes the hardware allocation and implementation setup. The scalability experiments use C++ and Python 3.11, NVIDIA CUDA-Q, glib, and scikit-learn. Both CPU and GPU backends are used with state vector simulation. The allocation is designed to avoid out-of-memory termination and early stopping, which highlights that quantum model scaling is limited not only by model design but also by computational resources. The contributions of the scalability section are threefold. First, it provides a systematic scalability evaluation across stress, emotion, and physiological data tampering detection, with experiments up to 24 qubits. Second, it studies how scaling affects model performance under comparable training protocols. Third, it investigates the nonlinear relationship between performance gain and model scaling. For stress detection scaling, the experiment uses 1,500 samples with 1,200 for training and 300 for testing in 5-fold cross-validation. 2 encoding strategies are evaluated: 1-to-1 encoding, where each feature maps to 1 qubit, and 2-to-1 encoding, where 2 features are encoded per qubit. The models are compared against classical baselines with the same number of features. The stress scaling results show an important trade-off. The 20-qubit, 40-feature, 2-to-1 encoding configuration does not outperform the classical baseline, but it has lower variability. The 24-qubit, 24-feature, one-to-one mapping achieves perfect metrics in one fold, but with much higher variability. The classical baseline is more consistent on average. This shows that peak performance alone is not enough, stability is also important. For emotion detection scaling, the experiment uses 2,000 samples, with 1,600 for training and 400 for testing in 5-fold cross-validation. The same 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 encoding strategies are compared. The goal is to evaluate whether increasing qubit count and feature representation improves performance over previous classical and quantum baselines. The emotion scaling results are class-dependent. The 8-qubit configuration achieves near-perfect precision and accuracy for the positive class. Recall for the negative class increases, suggesting better sensitivity to physiological variations associated with negative effect. However, the neutral class shows a slight decrease in accuracy under 1-to-1 mapping, suggesting that intermediate emotional states may remain more overlapping in feature space. For tampering detection scaling, the models are evaluated using 5-fold cross-validation with varying sample sizes and encoding strategies. The results show that scaling improvements are not uniform. In some cases, increasing model capacity produces more than 10% improvement. In other cases, it introduces unnecessary complexity or even performance degradation, with accuracy dropping substantially. This shows that scaling is strongly dependent on the data type and attack setting. The scalability conclusion is that state vector simulation at high qubit counts is computationally expensive, even with high-performance computing resources. Increasing qubit counts can improve performance, but the benefit depends on the data characteristics and the encoding scheme. Stress detection benefits the most, emotion recognition shows selective improvement, and tampering detection is domain-dependent. Practical QML design must balance performance gains against exponential computational cost. I now move to the conclusion and future research directions. This section summarizes the dissertation contributions across wearable biomarkers, classical machine learning, quantum machine learning, security, and scalability. It also outlines several directions for extending the work toward more robust, deployable, and clinically meaningful healthcare systems. In summary, this dissertation developed a context-aware stress detection and forecasting framework that fuses multimodal wearable signals with contextual information. It proposed emotion intensity estimation using wearable-only physiological data and regression models. It designed hybrid quantum classical SVM frameworks for stress and emotion detection, extended QML to physiological data tampering detection, and finally showed that quantum model scaling produces nonlinear and task-dependent gains. Future research for classical machine learning includes richer feature engineering, additional context variables, multi-label and multi-class stress detection, ensemble outcomes, and longer sequence modeling. For stress prediction, future work can explore longer prediction windows and models beyond RNNs and LSTMs. These directions can improve robustness and support more realistic continuous monitoring. Future research for quantum machine learning includes experiments on real quantum hardware, additional encoding schemes, noise models, and richer feature engineering. For data tampering detection, future work should use more diverse datasets, new threat models, and real-world deployment with cloud-based platforms. These directions will help determine how QML can move from simulation toward practical healthcare security and monitoring systems. Thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate the opportunity to present my dissertation work on next-generation healthcare with machine learning and quantum machine learning. I would be happy to take any questions.